This week's guest is passionate about breaking patterns in intimacy that keep us feeling alone, single, and stuck. She brings an in depth background in psychology, spirituality, and conscious relationship work to her practice with couples and single women looking to call in and keep love. Her latest book, Dare to Feel, The Transformational Path of the Heart, is out now. Her first book, Buck Like a Goddess, Heal Yourself, Reclaim Your Voice, Stand in Your Power, debuted in July 2020 to be number one new release and bestseller in three categories on Amazon for 3 weeks in a row, and was featured on Refinery 29, Pop Sugar, Bustle, and InStyle as a radical guidebook for women longing to feel empowered and inspired in their sexuality and body. She is best-selling author, relationship and intimacy coach, and mentor, Alexandra Roxo. And this is a re-released episode, which we recorded in August 2018. So before any of that had happened, and while she was hosting Moon Club. This is a re-released episode because I am taking some time out from recording. It is one of my favorite episodes, and I think you'll get a lot from it. And if you are a patron or feel like becoming a patron now, I will be doing a follow-up on where she is now and what has changed for her, and a little bit about her journey over the last 6 or 7 years since we recorded. Alexandra is somebody who I have kept in touch with, and whilst we don't see each other regularly, we have continued to stay friends and to dialogue with one another. So I really, really hope that you enjoy this episode. If you do, please do reach out to her and let her know that you enjoyed it, and become a patron so that you can hear the lowdown on what's happened to her since we recorded this interview. Enjoy. You are listening to Adulting with Ebony. Season 7 brings together neurodiversity, human design, and embodiment so that Gen X or millennial misfits and late diagnosed neurospices become empowered, embodied, and fully expressed. This is the show where I actively encourage you to feel your feelings rather than think them. Glow up, not grow up, and become full of yourself. Because who the fuck else should you be full of? Each week I have real and raw conversations about what it takes to be fully resourced and have happy, healthy, intimate relationships as a dopamine deficient adult wanting to create a better future by being the change that you want to see in the world. I am your host, Ebony Allard, aka Ebony Alchemy, a late diagnosed ADHDer, combined type and Asperger's in case you like specifics, artist, mystic, and self-actualization facilitator. I'm an international award-winning multiple brain integration technique master coach with special interest in embodied human design for neurodivergence. I've been in the personal development, creativity, and entrepreneurship spaces all of my life. And as a 5'2" emotional manifesting generator with a left angle cross of distraction, I am here to help you know what to trust and what to tune out. Each week, I share relatable, practical ways that mean you get to take less responsibility for more reward and safely remove your camouflage for more belonging, acceptance, and fulfillment. Ready? Let's go. Welcome.
Thank you so much. It's really nice to have someone else read your bio because you're like, oh, wow, I have done something. You sort of forget,
you know what? I really know. Like, it's equally like when anyone explains who you are. Like, I really love someone else introducing me to someone. Dinner party style, like, you know, when someone goes, hi, this is la 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 and she does this, and this is la 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 and she's really great at this thing. And I love that old traditional style of introducing each other. It's really lovely to hear someone's opinion or perspective actually of you.
Absolutely. And something that you haven't written, you know, because then you're like, you get to have that little insight into someone's mind of like how they really experience you. Which is like, as we're all such mirrors of each other, it feels really good to hear those things. I mean, can also be frightening and completely upsetting. Like, what? You thought I was a mega bitch this whole time?
I can't imagine that happening for so many reasons.
I did have a client yesterday who, like, I've been leading this mentorship group, and it's a small group of women, and it's just been kind of a dream to have like kind of a tiny spiritual community where I lead people through really transformational experiences, like working with ayahuasca and like doing deep tantric work. And one of my clients and women in the group was like, you know, there's been times where we all think you hate us, and then we think you love us, and then we don't know. And I was like, really? What? And I realized, you know, as you become really close with other women, there are always moments where you hate each other, where you love each other, because that person is essentially standing in as a reflection of you. So you hate yourself some days, you love yourself some days, you don't know if you're loving yourself someday. It's just, it's such a little bit of a mind fuck in that sense of like,
it's great non-attachment as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because like, especially in that role,
yes,
I'm pretty much the same, right? And I'm like, you know what, like what you think I think of you is none of my business, and ultimately none of yours, because you're having this whole relationship with yourself right now in terms of like judging what I think I might be thinking about you. Like I'm just showing up to meet you. That's right.
Exactly. And that's all you guys, you know, but I forget, I think, because when I'm leading or whatever, of course, I'm not thinking about the emotional, like sort of ongoings of everybody. If I was trying to manage that, I would never be able to be clear, you know. But it's just,
what is just, you know, segueing outwards, because we've dived in really deep already. What does being an adult or adulting mean to you?
Well, so I'm like a non-traditionalist in many, many ways, and I'm a rule breaker in many, many ways. I have an Aquarius moon and a Venus in Aquarius and a Gemini rising, but I'm a Pisces. For those of you guys who are into astrology, the Aquarian energy that I feel very emotionally sort of akin to is an outside the box thinker and a thinker for the people. Like it's kind of like you're always trying to have your thumb on the pulse of the people and to be one step ahead of the collective and sort of at the edge of the collective energy. And so when I look at the word adult, I think, oh, patriarchy, oh, capitalism, oh, like duality, oh, you know, and I think like this psychedelic visionary one who wants to beat the edge is just like, that's just another label that creates an illusion of getting somewhere and arriving at a destination. Now, I'm not saying your podcast is called Adulting, so I'm not saying that I don't like think that there's like some awesomeness in that word.
So for me, it's a really big difference between adult and adulting, right? Because as soon as you make it a verb rather than a noun, something really changes in that for me.
Yeah. So I think that if I were to look at it from the framework of like the kind of the self that's been conditioned, the self that's like been in a wound, the self that is, I don't like to say necessarily lower or higher, but the self that's like trying to stand and give itself to the world really beautifully. Like perhaps adulting could be like, hey, I've gotten through my own bullshit. I've gotten through the conditioning. I've gotten through my own traumas and wounding. And I'm like fucking ready to give it to the world. And like, I don't care if it's perfect. I don't care if it's beautiful. If it's messy, I'm going to give it and I'm going to show up.
Yeah. So for me, you know, like I was going to give you a whole rundown on my astrological as well, and I'm not going to do that.
Okay.
But for me, from my perspective and where I stand, it's really about this duality, right, that you mentioned in there, right? Like, how do I be a spiritual being having a human experience when I want to just exist in my cave or like in my field or in the ocean on my own, and at the same time I need to relate to other people because I'm also a relational being and I have this like push-pull back-forward thing. And being an adult means that I am self-responsible, that I have choice, and that I can create or co-create into my experiences, and I would like to do that responsibly. And so this, for me, the exploration around adulting is like, how do we show up and live like really human lives with stuff and like other people and roads and things like that, and also just really enjoy being and experiencing and becoming more than anything.
Yeah, I love that part. That's beautiful.
Yeah. And I think one of the reasons I wanted to have a conversation with you about that particularly was around the relational thing, right? So for a long time, there was like this first layer, and again, it's not about going up or down or being better or worse or higher or lower. Like the first layer of me discovering myself involved me getting to a place where I'm like, hey, this is a layer of self-acceptance that I never realized I would achieve. And then another human came into my, realm. I'm like, this is harder now. Like I can love myself and it's just me. I can be really spiritual and generous and all sorts of, great things alone. And yet that's not living. And yet it becomes very boring. And so I want to co-create. I want to bring another, whatever that looks like, 1, 2, there's no number necessarily on this, but I want to bring other people into my reality to co-create. And for me, that's where the challenge is, right? How have you found that part? How have you found other people?
Well, I'm an only child, which is interesting because I grew up a lot of time alone with like my dog, and I'm pretty much an extrovert, though I do have like very introverted times. But I do really thrive off connection.
Right.
But sometimes I feel like as a curse, I'm like, why do I need love? Why do I need connection? And I was writing about this morning because it's like, modern spirituality at times can be like, get the love from the divine, get the love from your practice, get the love from yourself, really master that. And part of that I do feel is true. And part of that I do feel actually is yet another kind of trap. And I think that actually surrendering to the fact that we need to relate and we need to connect. Like a baby cannot be born and placed in a field and then just raise itself. We learn by each other, by mirroring, by feeling. I was reading in a book the other night that that female, like some animals lick their baby's skin so that the nervous system is constantly enlivened. So it's not just a cleaning mechanism; it's actually to kind of soften the nervous system, and that as humans, we could really benefit from that. Like, what if we got more, right, than like just like a little hugging or a little breastfeeding for a few months?
Yeah, well, it's so interesting because I have actually, so growing up, I was born 12 weeks premature. And it's a really long time, particularly in 1980, right? And much later, I discovered that I had what is now kind of described as a norepinephrine addiction, right? And it's really interesting to me that I attract quite a few clients who are also in that place, who actually the idea of hugging or intimacy, rather than it being like a really beautiful connection thing, it's like it's actually dangerous. Like it doesn't feel good. And I've done a lot of work and exploration around that kind of like what it might be like to enjoy it, like what it might be like to really like look for. And I can't even articulate it because I'm like, hugs are nice and stuff, but can I get to know you first? Like I have to check that you're safe before I have that level of intimacy. My default is very untrusting, and I've done a lot of work to learn to trust.
Yeah, which would make sense if we're not given that level of intimacy by our first caregivers, who are those who are supposed to feel the most safe. If we don't get that baseline, then why would we like assume that it's possible ever with anyone, you know, like we probably assume that it's not. And so we need a lot extra, you know, to be able to open in that space. And I think that kind of circling back to what you asked before, you know, I think that when we come here to this magical earth school, it is to learn this relational way of exploring who we are, of working through things, of understanding ourselves, of accelerating our consciousness, awareness, growth. And I think that it's essential to our path on this planet. Like it is the path is through others, unless we go become a monk and live in a cave, which most of us didn't incarnate at this time to do that. Otherwise we would not have incarnated in the Western world on the age of Instagram. If we were supposed to go live in a cave, you know, we would have incarnated in some small town in Asia and like been in a lineage of monks or something, you know what I mean? So we are here.
How do you feel about the kind of intersection then of spirituality and sexuality? Because that's really interesting to me. When you talk about monks, you talk about like being in that cave, it's like connecting with a higher level of consciousness or a different level of consciousness, and that expansion through self, right? We touched on that before. Where does that fit in now into this kind of modern age of spirituality?
Well, I think that essentially we are having a return to understanding that we embody in a body, because bodies are awesome and they're not dirty and they're not wrong, and that everything they do is actually perfectly natural. Like shitting is a beautiful thing, you know, like dripping things out of your pussy is awesome. Like none of that, all of that, because of, you know, puritanical religions, et cetera, and even in some Eastern religions, like the body is not pure. The body is to be sort of transcended. In the lineage and the traditions that I follow and the teachings that I follow, the body is actually not unclean. The body is amazing. It is something to really revere, to appreciate. And in that, you don't get to decide that you like the arm, but you don't like the foot. And that the arm is beautiful, but that the foot is disgusting. And I'm going to try to get away from the foot and pretend it doesn't exist in this life. Mm-hmm. And so many spiritual traditions, I feel like, have tried to do that with sexuality. It's like, okay, I really appreciate my nose, but I'm going to breathe my way into purifying, you know, my left armpit. And it's like, that's hilarious to me. You know, why would we have been born into this delicious vehicle and been asked to ignore one of its parts, right? To shut it down. That to me is human stuff. It's not God stuff. Like, I feel like the human stuff is looking at the different of sexuality. I'm talking about metaphorically. If you guys didn't get that, the way of my way of speaking, I'm talking about sex here, kiddos. But if we were born into this amazing vessel and we were asked to not use a part of it, like, then we wouldn't have it, or it would have a lock on it. You know, it's an essential part of our being. And I believe that one of the reasons that we're so out of touch with the earth, and that so many of the species have been sort of killed and extinct, and that like we're just rapidly pillaging the earth, is because we're treating the earth like our bodies, like we've treated our bodies. And we've treated our bodies like they're kind of disposable, they're kind of shameful, we only like them in certain ways, and it's through this very particular gaze, right? It's like the gaze of capitalism, the gaze of what can I get from it, how can I make it serve me and my ego or my goals. When in truth, just like the earth, it's like our body is this holistic thing, and we need it. We need every part of it. We have to love every part of it. We won't ever feel whole or happy if we don't accept our sexuality and like our wildness and our disgustingness and our messiness, and however it shows up for each of us. And I think until we get to that point, we will be out of alignment with Mother Nature, because she is us.
That feels so true for me, you know.
Yeah.
And it's a really nice another really nice way into exploring the relationship that we have with our bodies, because so many of us feel so separate from them.
Mm-hmm.
And, if we're feeling separate from the earth, we're feeling separate in any other area like that, then we might go and spend some time on purpose communing and getting to know it better, right? You were living in a house and there were rooms you hadn't been in, that would be weird. You would go in them all, right? You would go through them out and go, oh, I like this one, and what can I get up to in here, and what does it look like? What does the light feel like? What does the light feel like at different times of day? Like all of that stuff. And so many people just have never done that with their own, with themselves, either internally or externally, like with their physical body or with their mind or with their, any of it really.
Yeah, exactly. And that to me is part of the joy of being alive. It's like I get to explore every cavern of my internal world, some of which are frightening, and from someone who's done a lot of plant medicine, psychedelic work, you go in there, you see it all the hidden doors, but behind them, there are also like the most magical things you've ever seen in your life. So, and the same is with our external body. It's like, I've spent time like really experimenting with sex and sexuality, and I've done and tried many things. And I don't regret it because I have been able to radically explore. There's still things that I do want to radically explore that freak the shit out of me, And I was talking to someone the other day who's kind of a lover that is like a soul friend that we can have connected sexually, he was like, I need you to show up completely with no shame. And I was like, how do I do that? And then I told him, I said, well, the only way that I can enter into a sexual moment with you with like zero shame is that if I feel very, very, very safe. And I think that we all need that. And I think that society hasn't really shown us how to create safe containers. So we're like, wait, do I just go on Tinder and do a one night stand? Do I just like become a wild sex goddess with all my toys? And it's like, no, that's approaching it from the surface, because really you do need a deep container of safety, of love, of intimacy. It doesn't have to be in a monogamous relationship, but it's just, you do need that deep space either with yourself or another human in order to be able to really go to those places, because they are very intense and they're portals to divine infinite energy, which sometimes can just open up all the cans of worms.
Because we as humans are so addicted to knowing, right? We're so addicted to certainty. And the thing is, if you start exploring that energy with someone else from a place of complete presence, you have no fucking clue what's going to show up, right? Yeah. And so you have to feel safe. You have to feel, and that, both of you have to feel safe physically, but also in all of these other realms as well. Because if you're doing, I was going to say, if you're doing it right, if you're doing it in that kind of place where you're really showing up, it isn't just a physical act. This is so much more.
Yes. And you really like struck the nail on the head there, which is just that the reason I think a lot of people avoid those spaces of such depth is because their shit's going to come to the surface. And people don't have the tools to deal with that necessarily because they haven't always done the work and because we're not taught them in life. And B, it is very vulnerable. So it's funny because I think most of us get rejected by other humans because they're not ready to look at their stuff. Like as simple as that, like women out there, anytime you've been rejected, it's because he is not able to look, or she is not able to look deeply at the things that are present in their field. Because, when you come and you open intimately, sexually, whatever, those things will come up. And if the other person can't deal, they will snap into unconscious behavior, and zone out, dissociate, numb out, whatever it is. And that's where the pain happens, and the guilt and the shame. And then it's just like, you've created more of a mess to clean up later, unfortunately,
Yeah, I really do. And I think it's so important to work on these other tools, right? When we have an ability to understand that we're mirrors for one another, when we understand that when we begin to develop a subtlety and an element of sensitivity so that we can really recognize, like, oh, is this mine, or is this yours, or is this ours? Is this something we've created together, or is this yours and you're projecting it, or am I, like all of that stuff. And without blame, without judgment, with just a real desire to be present, to explore with curiosity and to play.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and both people have to be ready to step into that space, whether it's just for a friendship or for one night or for some sort of a play buddy or as a long-term partnership. Like, I think that both people have to be on the same page of showing up and taking responsibility for their own shit, and it's such a beautiful, beautiful thing when you can step into a sexual or non-sexual intimate moment with someone and share your heart vulnerably and tell them, like, ow, it really hurt when you said this or did this, my heart hurts, and say it from feeling, and have that person receive and say yes, and not have them go into defensive behavior, but literally them say, thank you for sharing your heart. Like, to me, that has been such a paradigm shifter, as I've had many men in the past few years be able to sort of hold that space and really welcome it. Like, tell me where I'm being unconscious. Tell me where my actions are hurting you. Maybe it's your stuff, but still tell me, and I'm going to be here, and I'm not going to run. I'm going to hold space for you in this moment. Like, that is such a gift and intimacy for each other that we do that. Since we're all recovering from a lot of woundingness, most of us, that happens over the course of our lives. So to have another human in the most vulnerable, heart open, clothes on or off, intimate moment, just accept you and not run, and not go into defensive behavior, but just compassionately, lovingly listen, is such a gift. And that is where the healing happens in these moments, because you can rewrite such old patterns by just having these things happen. Your nervous system gets the signal, like, oh, wait, I shared my pain and the person didn't leave.
Yeah. And so for me, it makes it, there's so many levels of this. There's so many layers of this. And like, I can never talk about anyone else's experience except my own, but having done a lot of personal work, that means that I now feel able to go into that space without chucking all of my stuff at someone else, right?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. That's so important. Like, we have to know our own, demons and our own little manipulations and the places that we want to run and hide, or that we don't show up in order to show up, or we'll just learn them through someone else, because they'll just have it smacked in our face.
Well, yeah. And I'm also not saying that I've, healed any of it at all, but just the willingness to show up and go, oh, you know what? I'm actually willing. Like, my old pattern was to show up fully and then run. Right, like as soon as shit gets real, and I'm like, oh, this, you want to know, you want to see me? Oh, okay. No, I'm not okay with that. I think I need to leave. And I see a lot of the other people doing that or experiencing that as well. And so, yeah, really being able to spend the time getting to know ourselves and learn how to self-soothe and calm ourselves down, and understand the signals in our body and go, oh, this is defensiveness, or this is pain, or this is fear, like, oh, or this is excitement even. Like, I've had situations where I'm like, I must leave, this is scary. I'm like, is it scary, or is this sensation actually pleasure, or is this sensation actually like a stimulation? And if I stay present with it, and if I know I'm safe, can I relax? Just exploring.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you for having this conversation with me, kind of diving in there and yeah, really just being unashamed and uninhibited in terms of the language, and being able to kind of go into the different areas and kind of talk about it all. If people want to find out more of this sort of stuff, where's the best place for them to come find you?
My Instagram is where I share a lot of my ideas and poems and thoughts and opinions and things that I'm personally working on. And that's just at Alexandra Roxo. So that's the best place to find me. And I love having conversations about this stuff. I do think it's really important, and how we kind of begin to see the more integrated look at our spiritual selves as being embodied, as really loving are all of our parts of our being. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
I was going to ask you whether you have an I'm an adult, but to end with.
Oh, okay, let me think here. I am an adult, but I think most days I feel like a little girl.
Me too. And so you should. It's the best. Yeah. I am an adult, but sometimes I'm really scared still. Yeah. Thank you. This has been Adulting with Ebony. I've been Ebony. You've been great. Thank you so much for all of your support. Please keep listening, liking, rating, and sharing so that more people can enjoy and engage with us. If you want even more of me, and more importantly, even more of you in your world, take the next step. Become a patron, a Maven Haven member, get your free human design chart and report, or your compass, aka the value filter, to begin your glow up. Go to www.ebonyallard.com/welcome for more, and I will see you next time.